Hello, everyone, and welcome back once more. Now, we've been having a chat about all sorts of things, haven't we, Wendy? And we'll clue you in on them a bit, one or two of the things a bit later. But I think we were going to start. Well, first of all, I want to say that there's something going on internet-wise. So we've got little glitches happening occasionally in the internet. So please bear with us on that. But above and beyond that, we thought we might talk about the ego to start with, didn't we?
Maybe that's why we've gone glitchy, Sarah.
Maybe it is. Doesn't like it. The ego really doesn't like it. If you're any threat to it, it brings all of its demons out on the table and they start to dance in front of you.
Could be that. Oh.
Yeah. Okay, where to start? Well, you've heard me talk about the ego personality matrix as a level of consciousness, and that we've moved from the ego personality matrix, which is dimensions 1, 2, and 3, where the human race has been stuck for a very, very long time. And recently, we've done a move, not just us, but the planet itself has done a move into the lower dimensions or the lower levels, subharmonics of the soul matrix, and the soul matrix is dimensions 4, 5, and 6. And so, somebody has asked me, oh, does that mean I've left my ego behind? Well, it's not that simple. I wish it was. But, there is a degree in which there must have been a critical mass of us that got sufficient mastery of our ego to be able to begin to make this move. But that doesn't mean to say the job's done by any means. In fact, it's a long way from done, because the ego still has control of us if we allow it to, through dimensions 4, 5, and 6. And we do need mastery of it before we can move, full mastery of it before we can start to move into the monad or the oversoul levels of consciousness, because it's when we reach the monad and the oversoul that we really are moving fully into thy will, not my will. So we've got to have, tamed, wrestled the ego it into, under our control before we can actually fully step into handing it over, as it were. Otherwise, it won't let us. So, I mean, the ego, we all need the ego. It's not bad. I think we were talking about this. It's not bad. You need the ego for structure. It structures your personality. But it it shouldn't be driving. It shouldn't be the driver of your consciousness. It should be the passenger, or it should, maybe even a better metaphor is, it should actually form the car within which, or the vehicle within which your consciousness sits. It shouldn't be the driver. Your consciousness should be the thing that's in control of that. But here, within a body, living within a society, we need certain structures, we need certain boundaries, and without the ego, we have boundaries, etc., etc. So there are certain levels at which it actually is very useful and very good. It's when we let it get out of hand that you've got problems, and that usually comes from attachment. Too much attachment, too much desire body, possibly, problems with the pain body or with unacknowledged traumas and things like that. Often people go into ego in order, it's an avoidance measure. Am I making sense when I say that? It's you can be egotistical about something, not because you're being the big I am, but because you're trying to really block from your consciousness and your view acknowledging something. And so you kind of like overplay your hand in this direction in order not to acknowledge what's sitting as the elephant in the room, as it were. We can,
Yeah,
what I mean by that is we can try too hard sometimes.
yeah, and ego, I think, is a complex thing, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
something that springs to mind is, for example, anger can hide tenderness.
Yeah.
So, it can be it can be a shield, can't it? So some of the ego-based things can shield something that's more vulnerable, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, well, that's a very good example, because that's, ego being used to hide fear.
Mhm.
So often ego comes out so that we don't acknowledge negative emotions. And again, that comes down to possibly emotional wounding, or the fact that we live in a society that's really quite constipated at an emotional level. We're not very good at dealing with emotions. We're not taught how to deal with emotions well. Um, so yeah, ego, we need a healthy ego, because we need to stand up for ourselves. We need to have boundaries. We need to have confidence. But it's not about being falsely humble. There's nothing more annoying than someone who kind of acts humble but really isn't. They're using humility as in a false way. It really, I don't know about you, but it really sets my teeth on edge. It's maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's not very nice of me, but it's one of those things. It's like, oh, this is really awful. Stop it. Yeah, you're not being authentic. So, there's what you could call the little ego and the higher ego. So the little ego is really all about your wants, your needs, your desires. And the higher ego is really about the real you, the spiritual you, the authentic you, which is really above, materiality. The little ego uh, tends to deal very much at the material level. It's about status. There's a lot to do with status and wealth and power. And I mean, when I talk about the fallen races, I'm really talking about races that are very, very invested in the ego. The ego is very, very important at that level. So, you know, these are beings who have let the ego dominate, because it, control, power, domination, status, wealth, using others. The little ego is all about I. It's all about me, what I want, what I need, what I deserve. Whereas the higher self is all about, or the higher ego is about, what's good for the whole, what's the right thing to do. It's about bringing discernment to everything, and not putting yourself at the center, but putting the good of the collective, of the all at the center.
Yeah, I love that. And it feels to me like, the little ego can act up. And when we connect with the higher ego, the real self, we can sometimes feel very misunderstood if it's the little ego that's being read. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like people can misunderstand us and think that we're coming from the little ego place, where actually we're coming from the higher ego place, but there's some wounding
Yes.
that's kind of marring it. I mean, I'm working through a lot of stuff at the moment, which is like, okay, that person thought I was coming from there. Actually, I'm coming from here. And when I can hold the higher ego perspective, you can burn away some of the fear and drama that comes with the lower ego perspective and the misunderstandings that it causes. So it's a fascinating topic, isn't it? And, circling back to your idea that we're not taught how to deal well with emotion. We're certainly not taught to sit in the discomfort of negative emotion.
Yeah.
Um, and we're not taught to seek or to expect that when we do so, resolution will appear.
Yes.
The little ego feels like vexation, and
You
the
know,
higher ego feels like resolution.
yeah, absolutely. And the little ego is usually, it's wanting to avoid pain,
Mhm.
at any level. So if if you feel less than, it will possibly make you play up the, oh, the big I am. aspect of who you are, so that you don't feel inferior, or you don't feel like somebody turns up with the newest brand of shoes or something on their feet and you can't afford it. So you'll come up with some kind of drama, or you'll have a go at them and sort of about go into judgment of what an awful person they are. They seem to think that they're better than everybody else just because they've got a whatever the brand of shoes is, or you know what I mean. We've all seen this. We've all done it at some level. I mean, I certainly know there are times during particularly my school days. The school days are dreadful at this level, aren't they, where everybody's comparing themselves to everybody else, and you're always there's always something that makes you feel inadequate.
Mhm.
And therefore you then justify a judgment against whoever's making you feel inadequate in order to make yourself feel better. That's the ego trying to soothe itself. It's like, oh well, you know, she thinks she's so superior, but she can't do this, or whatever it might be. Or
When we turn it around, what we, one thing that somebody said to me once was so helpful is when we're jealous, we're actually saying, me too, I'd like that.
yeah, yeah.
And so when we understand that the jealousy comes from that place, then actually the little ego shows us where expansion is available.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, the ego isn't necessarily all negative. It
Mhm.
has purpose, and in doing what you might call the shadow work, in doing the work of really developing ourselves beyond the ego personality level into the soul level, it can bring gems to us if we understand how to use it. And we don't let it take over. We don't let ego-driven desires and needs and wants drive our life. But we can use discernment. We come back to we come back to that word time and time again, don't we? And what we talk about discernment, as to really what's going on. And what the work we're trying to do with the ego is to really reach a point of non-attachment.
Mhm.
You'll hear Indian masters and the like talk about this non-attachment, and it's like, oh, what does that mean? And god, it sounds awful, but it's about being in the world, being able to live in the world, but not being tied into it, so
Yeah.
that you can be the, and again, we've talked about this quite a lot, be the observer,
Mhm.
so that you can make a useful contribution rather than just a reactive um contribution to whatever's going on, that comes out of pain, or comes out of need, or comes out of fear, or comes out of inadequacy. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's one where you stood back, you can see the bigger picture of what's going on, and it's kind of like, okay, these are where the currents are going. This is how I can be useful. This is how I can help a situation. That's the higher self, as it were, the higher ego coming in,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
seeing how it can serve a situation rather than being wounded.
I love that question, and some people have an issue with the word service, but how can I be of service is one of the most liberating questions that we can ask ourselves, particularly if we're feeling particularly sorry for ourselves.
Absolutely. But be careful, because there are people who use service from an ego point of view.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Look at me, and look at me. I'm in service to everyone. That I've been called by the gods to be of use to you all. I mean, we all have met people like that, haven't we?
Well, I stumbled across a lovely phrase the other day. Somebody used it, and I was like, "Oh, that's great." So I'm sure other people have heard of it. But virtue signaling,
Yeah,
how good I'm being, and and it's again, it's sometimes can be linked in with this sort of false humility that you were talking about before.
yeah.
Um, and when it's false humility, there's a misalignment that just feels a bit like nails down a chalkboard, isn't it?
It's not.
Um, Yeah.
And you know, another thing that we see quite a lot of at the moment is confirmation bias. So that's kind of like, well, these people agree with me, so they must be good people. You know, we're all singing off this same hymn sheet. We've seen things that others haven't seen. We understand things that others don't understand. All of this kind of thing, and it's kind of like it's, you know, everybody at the end of the day, everybody's on the same journey. We're just all in different places on it. And if we just, you know, sort of keep going on, only talk to people who agree with us, we never really develop.
It's
We're
just
going,
an echo chamber then, isn't it?
yeah, it is. We're going around in a loop. You know, rather than sort of being challenged to understand different points of view and to expand out. And I don't know what it is. I mean, I can remember having the most wonderful, almost arguments that at times there would almost be really passionate arguments, but they, you know, they were under the heading of discussion. When I was at school, I mean, we'd spend breaks and lunchtime with a little group of us just picking things to pieces, you know, and taking, I would often be the devil's advocate because I'm quite good at that, you know, just seeing the other side of things. And because that's the way you pull all the threads out and the different arguments and things like that. I used to love that. Now you can't do it because people are so hurt. You're a
Hmm.
dreadful person if you think things like that. And why on earth would you say that? Or, oh God, she's so weird. You know, she has the most strange eye. And it's kind of like, what happened? What happened to our ability to have these passionate discussions about things in order to really explore what truth is?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, one of the things I found out about my own human design reading, and there might be some people that listening that understand that, was that I'm archetypically open-minded. And I wonder whether sometimes, we just find ourselves in situations where other people have other centers of themselves that are open, but maybe not the mind. So that was a mind opening and expansive thing for me to
Yeah,
explore. But I think sometimes we need to pre-frame these things, don't we? And say, I'm playing devil's advocate here, or I'm toying with a perspective that is, I wonder if, and invite people into that same curious conversation that we're seeking to have. And maybe that could diffuse it. But you're right, a lot of people do immediately jump to a response that perhaps is, well, what do you mean by that? Where are you coming from with that?
yeah. And you know, we've been through all this thing where people have been not allowed to speak at universities and things like that because their opinions would offend people and stuff like that. It's again, you know, there's a lot of ego within the, well, you know, I have the right to shut you down because I don't like what you're saying.
But as we know, anything that's tamped down goes underground.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
It's the pressure cooker. I mean, it's like I use the analogy that if somebody let's say I have a client and somebody is bothering them, maybe they're on the dating scene and somebody's bothering and then they say, I'm just going to block them. And I'll often say, you can do, but know that blocking them is not that middle ground. It isn't that place of neutrality. You're actually polarizing. And for me, I would rather be able to take the temperature of that individual rather than just block them and not know what's going on.
Yeah,
So, it's an interesting, yeah, where do you still have a finger on the pulse, and where do you draw boundaries?
yeah.
Um, and I think boundaries can be very energetic, but that's a whole other subject, isn't it? So,
It is, but I think you've touched on something that's important there because you know, we can gauge where our ego is by our energetic response to something. So if we are in touch with that, you know, it's kind of like, what am I invested in? And there are trigger points, and you can feel it at an energetic level. It's kind of like, you know, somebody turns up with a new car and envy comes in.
mhm.
Oh, there it is. You know, there's a trigger. You know, you're in the your ego is not really under your control. If you're really detached, if you're really not invested, it's like, oh, lucky you. Isn't that brilliant? But it's not, there's no envy in it. You know, I'm really pleased for you, you know, sort of thing. And you share their delight in having something bright and shiny and whatever, that they've desired. But it's not, oh, why can't I have that? Why isn't it my turn to have a new car? Or whatever it might be, you know.
Yeah, I had a perfect trigger like that the other day, and let's call it a car. It wasn't, but let's call it a car. And what I realized was, oh, that person there has a car. Why am I feeling bent out of shape about that? And I thought, do I want that car? And I thought, no, I don't want that car. So what is it? And what I realized with the excavation work was I wanted the choice to have the car if I wanted it. And then the realization that I didn't. So
Yeah.
then it leads to the interrogation, which is, well, what would I like instead? And then you start to get clarity.
Yes, absolutely. And it is worth asking yourself, what am I invested in?
Mhm,
What is it I desire, I want? Is
mhm.
it success? Is it wealth? Is it importance? Is it status?
Yep.
Is it being seen to be a good person? Is it having lots of attention? Is it, I mean, it comes in so many shapes and forms, and we all have this, and these are all points of attachment that we can just work on gently to move to a place where, yeah, it would be nice. I mean, it would be lovely to have a house with a swimming pool, but do I need it? No, my life is actually really great without it. It would just be a cherry on the cake,
Oh.
And if I
I
never get that cherry on the cake, doesn't matter.
think when we come into that level of clarity, because that's what you're talking about, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
the ego flashes something up. What's it flashing? Let's get clarity on that. And once you have clarity, you have the opportunity to
yeah,
then come into alignment with yourself.
yeah,
And that, if you like, feels like the resolution, doesn't it? It feels like the
yeah,
moment. Um, so ego, I think, like you say, it's a kind of a signaler, isn't it? Which is
yeah.
kind of like
It,
not its way, but something else, maybe.
yeah, so it's kind of like, what's it showing me, and then drop into your heart. And again, we come back to the heart time and time again. What's the heart saying about this?
Yeah.
The heart saying, yeah, that would be nice, but actually, you're okay the way you are.
Yeah.
Your life's great. It's full, the way it is. You've got so much more than most people. These little extras are not what's going to make you happy or unhappy or whatever. That lies within you. It's not in the remit of these things. So don't don't let them pull you down. Don't let them get you caught up and twisted into a false narrative about, oh, well, my life would be so much better if, or I will be happy when.
Yes, I think when we get there, what we're actually seeking is expansion, but not necessarily in the form of a swimming pool or a car.
Yeah.
So I don't think the ego ever really is asking for a material thing. Sometimes it does because it represents something, but rarely. And I've heard that phrase many a time before. I've been unhappy with money and happy with money, and I'd always pick, happy with money every time. But anyway, the point I think that we're making is that the ego may signal expansion, but it's unlikely to be telling you that you lack something material.
Mm,
It's something often that's bigger and truer and more heart-centered in its nature.
yeah, 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 absolutely. So yeah. Um, and really, if we could work with the ego properly, it leads us back to authenticity.
Mm. Hmm.
If we can work with it properly. Yeah. So it can be a great guide, a very bad master, but a great guide.
I love that. Amazing. So, is there anything else, Sarah, that you think that we haven't unpacked yet regarding the ego that you'd like to cover off today?
Oh, there's probably loads. I think we've probably done enough. Enough for now, at least hopefully enough to get people thinking a little bit about it. And yeah, and to not, I mean, we do live in a society where it's often talked about in a very negative way, but to understand it has a purpose, it has a function, but it's our job to keep it under control.
Amazing. So, if anyone's got any questions about the ego, their ego, other people's ego, then do write them below and we will endeavour to answer them for you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Wendy. And yeah, Thank you, everyone who's watching, and we'll be back again soon. Bye.